Hello, good morning, and it's a warm welcome to another edition of our program, Close Flow, here on NTA2 Lagos Network Center. It's my pleasure being here with you, and we cannot just thank all of you enough for being part of this show, because without you, we really do not have a show going. And like we say on this program, we'll take delight in going out to bring into the studio distinguished Nigerians. We call them distinguished because we believe they do have something to contribute to the space to make this Nigerian dream become a reality. And so we have gone out again to call in a distinguished Nigerian to come and speak to us about what he thinks the Nigerian environment should be like. This time around, we have invited the man of God to come and, well, share with us, his faith, his beliefs, his convictions, probably his own ideas on how badly we have done as a nation. Our guest is a conference speaker, is a teacher, is a youth counselor, is a marriage facilitator, and also is a writer. But like I said, he's a man of God, so he pastors, he shepherds a church here in Lagos. My pleasure to welcome Samson Adedokun to Close Flow.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. It's a pleasure indeed.
Well, let's start from your 40, which is your area.
Yeah.
A lot of Nigerians are still baffled, or they are not quite sure where the problem is. Religious leaders and affluent living. People see a pastor, they see a man of God, he's so well endowed, he's so, corporate, he's so, and it shows the affluence of being, a wealthy man. Whereas the majority of the congregation, they barely can even buy a pair of shoes. So, what's the problem?
I think it's a good question, and it's a good concern that many people have. But we must put that in context. The pastors that you see who appear to be affluent, perhaps somebody like me, who appears to be corporately dressed, are in a context. There are 1,000 and more pastors who live in a different context completely. Now, this is what worries me most when we talk about this subject. Many of us use the few who are visible, the few who are, in quote, popular, to make assumptions about the rest of the clergy. I have pastors who live in the villages who do not wear what I wear. There are pastors in different corners of this country and the world who don't have access to the things that we see with these others. Now, be that as it may, what should be the principle that should guide a man of God? Simple. Every man of God must not allow himself to be covetous. The blessing and the provision of God should be sufficient. In the area where I pastor, New Dawn Baptist Church, which is in VI, there are certain things that will be provided by the mercies and the grace of God in that environment. I should be satisfied with that. It should not create a conflict for someone who does not live in my environment. If I leave VI to live in another
maybe
area,
Ikorodu, for instance.
Exactly. I would live in the context of Ikorodu. It is critical that people make a distinction. And then thirdly, is the part where we should genuinely have concerns. When clergy, as many other leaders do, then decide to live above the level of the common people, in other words, should it be okay for me to say because I am a pastor, I can live very outrageously? That would never be acceptable. The Lord himself would never give me a pass mark on that. That is the truth of the matter. So if it gets to a point where I am now living outrageously, living beyond what would be considered to be decorum, then there are issues. That would be my take on it.
Very candidly spoken. Well, because you're already a conference speaker, so I should assume that you do this quite often. So, I mean, that really is not begging the issue. Now, if we bring it nearer home,
yes,
where, of course, would be of great concern would be Nigerian youths.
Yes.
Try to find the proper role models. And they look up to certain, aspects of life, especially the church, where they can find that role model. Do you think the church is playing that role effectively now?
The church will always play the role effectively in all times and in all ages. And I'm not trying to play on words or use funny language to cover up. There will always be areas where things are not right, even in the church. We'll always have a few here and there who do not represent what the church should represent.
That is the larger church.
Yes, we will always have that. But the truth of the matter is, if you are looking for the right model, you will find it in the church. Because there are 1,001 pastors today, 1,001 churches today. It does not mean all of them are called of God, so to speak. That's the truth of the matter. There are pastors today who we would just come across suddenly. You will ask the question, where did he come from? What is his background? What is his training? Who groomed him? Who discipled him? If you ask people who know me, they'll be able to tell you, we know him from this place. We know what he went through to become what he is now. There are people who can call me to order and check me. And so when young people are looking for models and mentors, they should be looking for people who have a track record. What has happened to us? What has happened is that our youth have become confused by the need and the desire to suddenly make wealth. And so today, a young man does not think there is a value in going through the wrongs and becoming somebody of quality. So he may not likely choose to follow after me, because I have been a young man growing up in the system, quitting a job to go into training to be a pastor, serving other pastors before eventually leading a church on my own. Maybe perhaps he would rather tomorrow put up a notice board, Church of Miracles, Fantastic Ministry, and he's the senior pastor. He doesn't want to go through any processes. So such a young man may not choose me as a mentor. He would look around and say, this fellow is doing great. I'll just be like that. So there are issues, but the church continues to play the role. You know why? Simple. The ministry of the church does not lie in my hands. The message of the church is not my message. The message of the church is the message of the Lord himself. No man can change that, whether now or in the future. I may fail as a man, but the message remains because it is divine. So that is the reality.
Now, but let's be practical.
Yes.
Because, you are a double graduate, you know, of both English and divinity.
Yes.
So, in a way, we must find a way to also let the discipline pass across, as it were.
Yes.
So let's be practical now. But how can we now let these messengers, because now we have distinguished between the message and the messengers. How can we now get these messengers to help us let this message permeate, the society, so the young people can begin to, realize themselves,
Important. I think we should first of all address ourselves as the church. I think it's important at this point in time that all Christian leaders, denominational leaders, sit back and say, look, what is happening? Should it be all right for me to... The message of the gospel is not changed, it's true, but should it be sufficient for a young man to simply wake up, set up a one-stop place and almost like an ATM machine, he begins to be pastor just like that? There should be serious questions to be asked of us as ministers. That's first. Secondly, those of us who are currently ministers, we may need to ask ourselves, how is it possible that there are so many churches, so many men of God, and yet Nigeria remains the same? I'll tell you a story.
The same or worse?
Well, make me feel good. It remains the same, please. I'll tell you a story. Many years ago, I was on a conference planning committee, and we held that conference in one very important place in Nigeria today. And we had this guest speaker who came in, and we're bragging to this person and saying, oh, Christians gather here in many hundreds of thousands. And he was saying, wow. And we say, yes, we're feeling good that we're impressing him. And then he asked a simple question. And Nigeria still remains the same? That is a very serious question. If there are hundreds and thousands of Christians in Lagos, should we not see that there is also a concurrent implication on the society? All of us who are believers must ask that question. The young men on the streets, and believe me, sometimes we think there are only bad boys on the roads, bad girls. They are in church. They come to worship. They attend Bible studies. So we should ask, what has happened to them also? So clearly there must be the problem of either the message is provided in a phony way, In other words, it's not real, it's not genuine, it is not what it should be. It's not connecting. And then the other side of it is that those who are hearing the message have also become challenged. Before now, if I preach a message on humility, and I talk about it sincerely, the way Scripture talks about it, you may take it. Many years ago, it would have been very sufficient. What is the problem today? Today, there's a confusion. People are saying self-esteem, your ego, your this. And so, assert yourself. And so, it's confusing the idea of humility. They think humility means that I don't have self-esteem. For goodness sake, that's not what it means. Humility means I see myself the way God sees me, and I respect other people for what they are. Nobody can deflate my ego. It's not necessary. I am who God made me to be. But that doesn't mean I should disrespect you. So there's a conflict of thoughts, a conflict of processing today that was not there many years ago. And it is the business of the church to then make every effort to simplify that message, to get young people and adults as well to be able to connect with that message without confusing it. I hope I'm not confusing our discussions some more.